I want to know why you describe yourself as salty. What does that mean?
I've just always been this way. As a kid, I just hated losing. Like my first competitive memory ever is like when I was in second grade, I went to this seventh grade math competition. It was like a middle school competition that was held at the like local university or whatever for middle schoolers.
But you were 7.
Yeah, I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was competing in like middle school math, and like I did the like math test and whatever. And then they were calling out the names of the like, here's who got third place, here's who got second. And I was kind of like waiting for my name to get called, and then I was none of them. And I just remember being so pissed about that. Yeah, I can't really give you a rational explanation for why it is.
It doesn't have to be rational. But
Yeah.
like, how much of your brain is dedicated to competition?
I mean, it's all I do, honestly. I don't know. I think the like.
Whoa, what do you mean it's all you do?
Well, I think strategy game. I don't know. It's the way even building a company. It feels the same. It's just like you're calculating the moves. You're thinking about, okay, if you do this and then this happens and then you do that and here are the different moves, and you're like calculating out what comes out to success. You know, it's like a tree search. You know, where you're exploring the different options in the decision tree and you're trying to figure out how to lead to victory. Like that's like the only thing I do in my life.
So this is basically just, you don't have memories when you weren't like this, basically.
I think that's right. Yeah. I was a little brother growing up, and so my older brother was 4 or 5 years older than me, and naturally we'd play video games, and similarly, I would just always be super salty there as well. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, it's just always like that.
So like I spent some time with Demis from DeepMind, and what was interesting is I draw a lot of like similarities between you two because I've also spent some time with you. And I was like, well, they're both really smart. They're both articulate. They have like a friendly UI, right? But then underneath that is like this like ruthlessly competitive drive. Yeah. And Demis, I think he said this publicly, but I think he said like half his brain is dedicated to competition. Yeah. And a lot of that comes from his early days in chess.
Yeah.
What were you competing in when you were younger besides math competitions?
Yeah, well, basically everything. So obviously the main thing was math and programming competitions. And so ever since I was really young, that was like my like life, you know. My whole goal was to become like world champion of competitive programming. I would do that all the time as a kid. I would do, you know, the really great thing about these competitions too is you know, you compete in your school competition, and if you do well enough in that, then you make it qualify for the local or like the city competition, and then if you do well in that, then you get to like the regional competition and the state competition, and then you get to go to the national thing, the international thing, right? And so it's like a very nice setup where sooner or later you get to kind of meet people who are like you, basically. When I was a kid doing these competitions, going for that, it was like all I really cared about. Those people that I met through these national, international competitions were honestly more like, they were my childhood friends more than like the people around me in Baton Rouge, Louisiana were. And it was like, we would hang out online, we would talk about math, we would talk about problems. But all the other things too, I mean, I played basically all the different competitive games. So like I played a lot of Super Smash Brothers. I used to go to tournaments for Super Smash Brothers. It was a lot of fun. I played Melee. And then I played like Tetris. I played a lot of poker. I played some chess. I was okay at chess. I was not good. I played some Go. My dad was a competitive Go player. My parents came to the US in some sense because of Go, which was kind of a funny coincidence because my dad was in grad school in China, and he had a professor who like really liked him. The reason he liked him was because my dad was like a really good Go player. Like he was like a 7 Dan at Go, which if you were to call it in chess would be like, I don't know, 2,300 or 2,400 rating equivalent or something like that. He would play with this professor, you know, on the weekends and stuff. And they're like, you know, my dad would generally win, and they would like talk about the games and stuff. And then that professor ended up moving to the US to come and teach. And at the time, you know, this was super early on in, you know, immigration from China to the US. And so it was not a very like, it wasn't really a path that people knew that you could take. The professor wrote my dad and said, hey, like I came, it's great. Like there's so much more opportunity. It's so much better. Like you should obviously come as well. Like I'll help you with your like visa application. I'll help you like apply to colleges here and everything. And so my dad applied to grad school in the US. And that's kind of how we ended up here in the first place. I was born after we moved to the US, obviously.
So your dad was competitive in Go. What was your mom competitive in though? Because I think I read that you said that she might have been the most competitive person in your family.
Yeah, no, she was always, she was definitely the most salty, I would say, for sure. I mean, she would,
What does salty mean?
Salty just means that you take offense to the idea of losing.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. She would always be, oh, no, I'm better at this, or I'm better, I could beat you at this, And I don't think she played ping pong a bunch growing up, actually. She played on her school ping pong team. Obviously, she studied some amount of math and so on. But it was more her personality than any one thing that she really put all of her competitive energy into.
I spent a lot of time, obviously, reading the biographies of history's greatest entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by there's usually two different kind of archetypes for the parents. One, you have the Larry Ellison and the Elon Musk. Their dads would literally tell them, you're worthless. There's stories in Elon's biographies where his dad just gets in his fucking face and yells at him for hours. Yeah. Larry's adopted father would just tell him you're never going to amount to anything. And so that they had this inner fire to disprove, saying that basically, no, fuck you, dad. You're wrong about this, right? And then you have the Estee Lauders who, their uncle or even their father is just you're really special. You have a lot of talents. If you put a lot of effort into this, you can do whatever you want. Your mom falls it more into the Estee Lauder category where she would tell you that hey, these people are doing amazing things. You could do even better than them, correct?
I think they would have been happy enough if I just got a more traditional, cushy job and did all of that. I don't know that they specifically steered me towards entrepreneurship and being a founder, but no, they were always very supportive.
But your mom gave you self-confidence.
Yeah, I think she always told me that I was the best. And she was always extremely proud of I had these, when we would go to these math competitions.
Hold on, so you said she always told you that you're the best. Did she say that before there was evidence?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. I think even when I was tiny, she would tell me that I was extremely talented. She was always a huge source of support for me, and she always obviously believed in whatever I wanted to do. Because you would compete in math competitions, you would get these trophies and stuff. And we didn't have growing up, we didn't have pictures of our parents on the walls. We just had old math competition trophies. It was my mom was very intentional about no, the thing that we value in this household.
Other people's trophies are the ones you want.
Ours, okay. The ones that me and my brother want, of course.
We're going to put up pictures of other people's trophies, and you'd better damn sure replace them with your own.
And so when I was pretty, my brother as well, we both really like these competitions, and so we're accumulate these trophies, and she would always every time we got one, she would hang it up, and we're put it up on the mantelpiece and everything. And no, it's it was always I think what she really valued. I think education was really important to her, and I think being the best was very important to her as well.
I want to tell you about the presenting sponsor of this podcast, Ramp. I have been reading a lot about SpaceX lately. SpaceX is one of the most valuable private businesses in the world, and one of the main themes in the history of SpaceX is constantly attacking and questioning your cost. Ramp helps many of the most innovative businesses in the world do exactly that. The median company running on Ramp cuts their expenses by 5%. And one thing SpaceX has demonstrated is that a religious dedication to controlling costs can help actually increase revenue because you can pursue opportunities you couldn't otherwise. And we see that in the Ramp data too. The median company running on Ramp also grows their revenue by 16%. So when you're running your business on Ramp and your competitors are not, you have a massive competitive advantage that compounds over time. Ramp is the only platform designed to make your finance team faster and happier. Many of the top founders and CEOs I know run their business on Ramp. I run my business on Ramp, and you should too. Go to ramp.com to learn how they can help your business save time, save money, and grow revenue. That is ramp.com. What matters to you more? What is it the pain of losing? Is losing is worse than the love, the thrill of winning? Because that's how you started it. You're just I could not stand losing. Let me back up. I was reading another Larry Ellison biography. He says this. He's just listen, I'm addicted to winning, but I fear losing more than I love winning. And I actually talked to Michael Dell about it, and he's it's just the fear of losing is the pain of losing is way worse than the good feeling of winning. So
I think that's definitely true in terms of how it feels. In order to get anywhere, you got to lose a lot. If anything, almost a lot of the, a lot of the guys you're talking about, if anything, the way they got to where they are is by losing a lot and having their share of wins along with that. But you just have to put yourself out there and do a lot. So it's kind of an interesting thing to your point of I definitely feel the same way that, losing feels way worse than winning feels good. but not by enough that it makes me want to stop trying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's impossible. I know your personality type. Like, it's just impossible for you not to do this.
Yeah.
What is, like, let's get into Devin.
Yeah.
What does, like, winning with Devin look like to you?
So again, we're hyper competitive, but also, the other thing about us is like we all had kind of started our own companies before this. So our founding team is a pretty big founding team, it was 9 people. And most of us had already founded our own companies before. We had done different things. It was true for a lot of the early team. And we've always thought about this as like, this is the big one. And so like, we want to go for it all, we want to be a generational business. Like we want to build a hyperscaler and we want to go and do that. And like, maybe we'll succeed, maybe we won't, I don't know. But like, that's what we're going after. And I think to me, what that means in our field, in building software is like, people sometimes use the term like a coding agent or like, like AI programming or something. I always like, I always hear that. I think a little bit about like, well, we're not going to be interacting with code for that much longer, or programs might not be the right like level of abstraction. But I think what is always true probably is that it will be the human-computer interface. And so what I mean by that is like the way that we think about Devin, if we're successful, is Devin is the way that humans can tell their computers what to do. Because that was the whole point of software engineering anyway, right? It's just to be able to work with your computer and tell it what you want it to do. I mean, I think doing that for the world is like a massive opportunity, and that's what we're really excited to go after.
Why is that interesting to you? You just said we all did different things. We came together and we're like, no, this is the big one.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is, we're a bunch of nerds who were all programmers and built software and so on before. And now this is the idea of teaching AI how to go do that.
Wait, say more about that. What you just said. We're all nerds. This is the big one because we can actually teach AI how to program.
We're all nerds who've spent the last, 20 years of our lives just coding and making little things for the world. And the idea that you could teach AI how to go make things and have everybody have an AI that can help them make things and feel the wonder of that. I mean, it's pretty sick.
Is that the single idea in the world that animates you the most, that gets you the most excited?
I think it is incredible. Yeah, I mean, I would go further too and just say like at a zoomed out level, I honestly think that, because everyone talks about AGI, everyone talks about, well, what is the future going to be like? What are human lives going to be, once AI can do everything? And I mean, to some extent, I think the thing that is most human, obviously, is self-expression, creativity, like having things that you want to make happen in the world and being able to go do those things, right? And so, I mean, a lot of how I think about this is basically we want to build the tool that gives everybody the power to go and make things that they want to make in the world. My co-founder has this line, which I've always loved, which is, we've been spending all this time living in survival mode as a species, and now we're going to be living in creative mode. And I think that's right. Like, I think, Minecraft survival mode is where you're like, you're growing food, you're like making sure you're safe from the monsters at night and whatever. And like creative mode is just like, everything's up to you. You have all the resources at your disposal. If you want something to happen, it'll happen. And the only question for you is like what you want to make happen. I think it's going to be amazing. And I mean, I think that is like the world that we're going towards. And like, we want to be the ones building that. Okay.
So talk about what Devin does today.
Yeah.
And then I want you to flesh out that idea of like where you see it in the future. It's just the interface between humans and computers.
Sure. Yeah. So Devin is today, what folks know as an AI software engineer. And basically what that means is that Devin is a tool that anyone can use that will work with them end to end on building out software. And so we work with a lot of the biggest companies across the world. We work with Goldman Sachs, we work with Mercedes, we work with, a lot of areas of the US government at this point and so on. And we work with their software teams to just help them build more and do much more. And, the thing about it is in the last 20, 30 years, obviously, I mean, software is eating the world is the famous line. I think it's very much true. It's still got a couple order of magnitudes to go. And in practice, what it looks like is that teams use Devin to ship 10 times faster and to do 10 times more.
Okay, so that's where it's at today.
Yeah.
How do you get to where you're saying there is no, like, you're just the interface between humans and computers? So
now we're going to get into a philosophical discussion of what it means to be a programmer or a software engineer, right? And I think like, if you go all the way back, it's, there was a time where programming was like using the vacuum tubes and like plugging all those in and having it do the machine do the arithmetic, right? Like the ENIAC was, with the first, in some sense, the first computer out there, although it was obviously very different. Or it would have been like, filling out the punch cards and like setting up or writing, the like putting down assembly, you know, or writing in BASIC or something, right? So we've gone through a lot of generations already, is my point. And what does it look like, you know, going forward? When you talk about programming, all it really comes down to is like, how do you tell your computer what to do? And like every single piece of software that you use, if you're using, you know, Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever, like that's a piece of software that somebody, or like some, you know, in these cases, some pretty big teams of engineers came together and thought through all these details of, okay, here's what I want it to do. Here's how I want it to look. Here's what I want this button to do. Here's how I want to architect it. Every single little decision obviously was made by somebody, but the computer itself is then executing it accordingly to what the wishes of its creators was, right? And I think what we'll start to see is that abstraction will continue to climb, right? And like, you know, we kind of see this already. Like at this point, you don't need to know a programming language. It's like you don't need to know Python or Java or something like that in order to build your own software, right? And you can just say, hey, here's what I want. I want to make a cool website that does this, this, and that. Or, for example, you know, in my existing product, you know, here's what we have today, and I want to change this thing, or add this new plan, or add this new feature, and just have the agent go and do that for you, right? I think we're going to continue to go further down that axis. One important kind of like distinction I'd make, which is, you know, I think what we'll see a lot more of in the near future, is software today. The math only really works out to create software if it's going to be used at least like 1 million times or something. You know, I'm giving maybe it's 10,000 times or whatever. And my point is like, if you want to go build a product today, you need a whole team of engineers. Engineers are expensive. You got to pay salaries. You got to go build all this out, and you got to go and do that, right? You need that software to be used enough times or to create enough value for that to be worth it, right? And you know, something like YouTube passes that test because obviously so many hours have been spent on building YouTube, but way more hours have been spent on using YouTube, and that's what's made that work out and made it feasible, right? But there's so many things out there which only, you know, very specific things that only need to be used a few times, or even like only need to be used once, right? And so like all the white collar work that we talk about today even is very, all right, you know, wake up in the morning, all right, I'm gonna go look through these like 15 LinkedIn profiles, I'm gonna look for this and that or whatever, or I'm gonna go fill out these forms, or I'm going to do this data analysis and put this Excel sheet together with this research that I found, right? All of these things are things that could be done with software. It's just, it obviously doesn't make sense to hire a whole team of people to go make you that piece of software, which you're going to use one time and never again, versus just having the human go and do that themselves, right? I think what we're going to get to is we're going to get to a point where you are just giving your instructions to that agent, and the agent on the back end, you know, you don't even have to look at this, but on the back end, the agent is going to figure out, okay, I'm going to write this code that's going to go do this. I'm going to put a script that automates this part. I'm going to do this and do this. And that's what's going to allow it to actually go and do all these things. But what you start to get to, you know, as we're kind of saying, it's like, this is really just how you control your computer and how you do what you want to go do, right? And you wake up in the morning and it's like, here's what I want to go do. You talk to your agent about it. You figure out the task together. Once it has it, it can do the part of the literal, like, all right, put the pen to the paper on writing code. But that task is like, you know, you're the one that's deciding what to do.
So this ideal future that's in your mind, right? How far away do you think we are to that?
Yeah. I mean, we've made a lot of steps toward it. I would say we still have got a ways to go. You can use Devin today. You can use all the different kind of coding tools today. And you can do a lot more than you could have done, you know, 10 years ago. But certainly, or even 1 year ago or 6 months ago. But certainly, you know, it's not at the level that we're talking about of you are Neuralinked into the AI and you can tell it exactly what you want it to do and what you want to see in the world and just have the AI go and do that. When do we get there? It's hard to say, but I think we'll have solved most of that over the next 5 years or so. And in AI terms, 5 years is like a century. You know, in the rest of the world terms, obviously, it's like, it's kind of crazy to imagine that things can change that much in 5 years, but I really think it will.
So this is kind of related to something I heard you say, where you're saying that humans just have a really hard time understanding exponential curves.
So true. I mean, you see this in the progress itself. You see this in the scaling laws with the data. You see this in the revenue curves of the companies that are building an AI,
including your own.
And it's a very, you know, it's like humans aren't really wired for this, right? Like all of our like inherent like fight or flight response are kind of like our ability to kind of like measure things, to vastly oversimplify it. If you're just, you know, fighting out there, you know, foraging for food or whatever it is, like a good hunt will bring you, a couple days worth of food or something. But obviously with the kind of exponential curves that we deal with, the equivalent of a good hunt here could be 1,000 years worth of food. And we don't have that intuitive signal in our brains to really understand that, right? At a really deep, like native level. People often underestimate, I think, how fast things can change and how fast the world can change. I mean, my parents even like drilled this into me because they grew up in communist China, and they came to the US. And, even that, like we're talking about what were ultimately even like much slower scales of progress in some sense relative to, I think, what we're seeing today. But even that was like, as you can imagine, it was incredibly jarring to them. The idea that like you come to the US and everybody has a car and all of these different, it's like everyone has all these household appliances and has all, it was a very different life when they grew up. In like, the 60s in China, and they were much, much poorer, and it was very, very different, right? And it's like, I mean, funnily enough, people got used to all these things pretty quickly, and now we can't live without them. But I think we'll kind of undergo the same period with AI, where 5 years from now, it's going to be insane to think about all these things that we're going to have. 10 years from now, we're going to have forgotten that we ever lived without them, honestly.
What do you think you understand about AI that other people don't? The reason I asked the question is because we have some mutual friends. I would describe our mutual friends as some of the most AGI-pilled people that I know.
Yeah.
And I feel every time I have a conversation with them, I'm like, oh, even though I pay attention to this stuff, I feel like a toddler compared to like somebody like you. And so I'm very curious, like, what do you understand about AI that most people don't? And even people within the tech industry.
No, you're way too generous. I don't know that I have anything that interesting or that deep of an insight. I mean, I think it's.
You say that because you're used to it.
Here's what I'd say, is the way that folks typically kind of predict the future or think about what happens next is they pattern match based on what they've seen historically. And they say, okay, well, for 100 years, it's always been like this. And it's probably safe to assume that it will be. And 99% of the time, that works great, right? And in these particular periods where things that actually move and there are real things that are different, those are the 1% of times where it truly is different. Now you just kind of, rather than any kind of pattern matching, like what really matters is just thinking about things from first principles. Like AI, there's the famous like METR report, which was saying, a couple years ago, AI would do about 10 to 20 seconds worth of human work without interruption. And then you'd have to, guide it or direct it, or it would make a mistake or something like that, right? 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And that's just doubled every couple months, basically. And now we're talking about like hours of work. So basically an AI can just take a task that would have taken humans hours of work to go do. If you go and describe that task well enough to the AI, it will just go and do the whole thing and come back to you with the result. And then you give it the next thing, right? And if you just ask from a first principles question, well, why can't that be days, or why can't that be weeks or months of work? And then what does the world look like if everybody has an agent that can just do months of work for them at a time? Then you get to a pretty different conclusion from what we've all seen and what we've all lived for the last several years. And I think that kind of first principles thinking is as different as it sounds and as crazy as it sounds. This is one of those times where it's actually more correct than the simple pattern match, if that makes sense.
I think you've even taken this further, where you're like, well, what happens when they can work for a year unassisted?
Yeah. And I think that's true, and I think we will get there.
If Devin could work for a year without any human assistance, what would you have it do right now? Destroy your competitor?
all sorts of things. I mean, no, I still wake up and think about this in every different, every little thing that I run. Dumb example. Yesterday, I was sending out like a bulk email. And I was like trying to get the email formatter to work, and it's like kind of painful. Some of these things are still like kind of hard to use, or it doesn't support a certain styling of the email that you wanted to go do. I think the thing I had pasted something with indents, and then it was just couldn't unindent them because the editor, I don't know, there were some weird things where the editor would not allow you to unindent one part but not the other or whatever. And I was just thinking it's really crazy that that I'm still doing this, basically, right? In as much simplicity, or honestly more, as it would take you to explain this to another person. Hey, here's what I want to do. I'm just trying to make it look like this and then that. the rest of that execution should just be done for you, you know? And then you get to the point where you actually really just get to spend all your time thinking about, well, what do you want to do? You know, what do you want to build? What do you want to create? Like, what are the things that you want to see in the world that aren't there already?
But I think what makes it interesting about what you were saying earlier is like the more you increase the time, the more interesting it gets to me. So like there's this guy named Edwin Land who I won't shut up about. And he was the founder of Polaroid. Steve Jobs' hero. A lot of what we think of as Steve Jobs' ideas literally just came from Edwin Land, down to like the chairs and the table he would use for his presentations. It's like the same thing that Edwin Land used in like the 70s in Polaroid. And he thought of himself as a scientist, not as an entrepreneur, Edwin Land. He died with, I think, the third most patents. He's just like Thomas Edison, some other dude, and then Edwin Land. And what he did is he couldn't figure out, he invented the industry of instant photography. Before you took a picture and you're like, hey, how's it look? They're like, we'll find out 2 weeks from now when we get it back from Kodak. Like, I have no idea. And he took a picture of a Polaroid. He's like, we'll find out in 60 seconds when it dries. But that was black and white forever. When I read that part where you're like, well, we're gonna have agents that can work on a system for a year. I didn't think of what I would do, which is a question I just asked. I thought of Edwin Land hiring this guy. He's like, I want you to think about how we turn this from black and white into color. And before he could begin, the guy worked there and just thought for 2 years. I'm like, that would be very convenient if I could have an agent attack this problem and while I'm working in the background because I can't figure it out. They're just thinking about how to attack a single problem for 2. In his case, this is the guy that fucking solved instant color photography. It just took him 2 years of thinking to do it. So this is like, I'm going to push you on this a little bit more because it's like,
no,
I don't want your year-long agent to send bulk email.
I agree. I agree. Just to be clear. I think at some point it's kind of, you see this, right, where it's like, when you're talking about seconds, you're literally talking about just like a specific command, right? When you're talking about hours, you're talking about giving it a task and having it do the task, right? And I agree with you. Obviously, bulk email is not, for years, what you're talking about is like, you're giving the agent a mission, basically, and it's like this.
That sounds way more fun.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, what do I care about? And the answer might be, look, I want to I'll give you a million different examples. The answer might be, look, there's this like one, societal problem, which is really important to me. And I think I think it's a solvable problem. I think we can all be happy, but like, we really need to spread awareness about it. We really need to get folks to understand the points of it. And we need to figure out how everybody should, work together and coordinate on it. That's your point. That's a problem that an agent can think about, right? Or even, some of the kind of like sillier things too. Like, there's this video game that I really like, but I wish, if I were making the game, here's exactly how I would think about all these things. And I feel like there's like this really cool idea if, you could combine elements from this one game that I really like, but then incorporate some of the elements from this other game and set the agent off on that mission of like, look, we're going to go and like make the coolest thing ever and the coolest game ever. And like, we're going to incorporate those elements. We're going to think about how those like, nicely intertwine and work together, right? Or if it's like, here's this like piece of just like novel science, which I'm just like really passionate about. Materials have been created this way for years and years, but like here's this like avenue of attack, which I've been wondering about and thinking about of maybe there's a different like novel construction of materials this way. Send your agent to go work on that for years, or months, right? And like have it study that and explore these things and run its own experiments and try all these. I think all of these are I think soon going to be very possible. And to your point, it's very different.
Yeah, I like the framing of we're sending them on missions.
Yeah.
I would have one that would pick the missions that I need to send other agents on.
Yeah. Then you'll have the AI, which is like the manager AI of the missions. Yeah. And I think it's like, I think we will continue, it's, my example of this is like, I always joke about how, if you think about our ancestors from, hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, imagine them looking at us and what we do. And it's like, you're just pushing buttons, and you're like sitting in a room and talking with other people and you call that a meeting. And that's like those things, that's work for you guys, and it's like, what do you mean that's work? Like I'm in the fields, like I'm doing this every day. I'm going and farming. I'm making sure that, making all of our like, clothes by hand or taking care of all these things. And that's like work, but like, how can you guys call, and my point is just, I think what we will have going forward is going to look that different from what we have today. We will look at people who, as we say, just like have these really, really interesting curiosities that they want to pursue. They have like causes that they're passionate about. They have like fun ideas or like art that they want to create. And like they're sending off their agents in pursuit of those missions. And they will think of that as work. And we will look at them and be like, wow, it's kind of crazy that that's what you get up and think about all day.
when you started Cognition, did you know that you were going to try to make an automated software engineer? Was that your first idea?
I'll say it was always two things. One, it was always related to code and software, which again probably has something to do with us all being programming nerds. And then two is it was always around the idea that these would be like real multi-step iterative processes, which was I would say was a real hot take at the time. Like this was 2023, end of 23.
So this is when I met you guys.
Yeah.
And I was on a walk with a mutual friend of ours. And I remember first here, you guys scaled from what, like $1 million in revenue to like 500 million or something like that in what, like 20 months or something?
Yeah, a little more than 18
I remember before you had no revenue and I heard the idea and it was pitched as like essentially like an automated software engineer. And I was like, holy shit. This is like a huge, you're going after labor. This is a huge market. And then you released.
Yeah.
I remember the demo video.
Yeah.
And then you got a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Is that
well, it was kind of a mix of, I think, is the full polar ends of the spectrum, right? So there were some people who were like, this is the coolest thing ever. And like, all this, and then there were some people who were like, this is like the worst, thing that you could, but so it's similarly like in terms of the capabilities, there were some people who were like, oh my God, everybody's going to lose all their jobs tomorrow, which is not what we've ever really believed or thought of this as. To also like, dude, there's no way this is ever going to work. And like, this is totally a scam,
So what was the criticism? Did you release the product earlier than you wanted to?
Well, look, it wasn't even a product at the time, to be honest. I mean, it was more just like a prototype or like a demo of what was possible. And we had been working with it and playing with it for a few months at that point. And kind of just wanted to show people some of the examples of what it was capable of, because there was a real like it was pretty, it was pretty insane for us to see as well. Like I remember the first time that it did like a real task, like I could not sleep that night. And so it's just like showing that.
Wait, say more about that.
The first task that Devin did was it like set up MongoDB for us. And it's like, it's a standard thing. It's issues that a lot of people run into all the time when they're going and getting their kind of like initial, DB set up or whatever. But we would just like run into errors. You have this whole flow where you like, you find an error, you Google error, you find some message on Stack Overflow or whatever, or you ask ChatGPT and it tells you, okay, here's what you should try. You try that thing, you run into a different error. You like paste that in, and then and like for this one, we kind of like at some point we're just like, okay, Devin, just try to go fix it. Just go run commands, like do whatever you need to go do it, and then it worked.
And you couldn't sleep.
It was truly like, because again, it's like just seeing the exponential curve ahead, because this was a very, very specific case. It was the one success that we had. It was very much like a, definitely a way better than average run. But no, there was this feeling of like, why shouldn't all software and all products be built this way now? Like you can just tell it what you want it to do and have it go do it. I mean, it's kind of funny because, to your point, like we did get hate in the beginning. We did not feel motivated at all from the hate to be like, oh yeah, no, maybe you guys are right. Like maybe we should go and like, focus on the more kind of like chatbot Q&A style product experiences. Like maybe more than we should have. I mean, maybe we should have done something in the middle, I don't know. But like, I think for us, like when we had seen that and when we had done these different things, like all of those like demos that we showed, in our launch announcement were like actual runs of Devin that we had done ourselves and like run into and been like, holy shit, this is insane. For us, it was always kind of like, look, you can, we can debate when or like what level of effectiveness or whatever, but like, it's gonna happen. And that's how we always felt about it.
So explain the process of iteration to go from that product, you're getting a lot of hate. Well, actually, you know what? I called Jeremy Stern, who wrote this excellent profile of you in Colossus, which there's a lot of parts I was just laughing my ass off, by the way. And I was asking, I was like, tell me the stuff that didn't make the profile.
Yeah.
And he said there wasn't that much because you're kind of like an open book, and a lot of people like manage their media.
Yeah.
And you could have to talk about certain stuff off the record or whatever, and you were just like saying everything. But you did say something about like, you made the point where like when you released the first product, what was the benchmark?
SweBench. Yeah.
And it was at like
13%.
That was Devin.
Yeah.
And your point was that that's already better than.
Yeah, at the time, the best known was like 3 or 4% or something like that. But obviously, 13%. It still means you fail at, 87% of the time.
Was there a pronounced benefit from releasing early like that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so for us, by the way, if you kind of think about this overall AI ecosystem, I mean, a simple way to put it, it's like, dude, we were late by a lot. It's like OpenAI started.
Why though?
Google DeepMind or Google Brain, I mean, these are obviously, you know, more than a decade old already. OpenAI started like end of 2015, or even, you know, like the Anthropic or you know, other that folks talk about in the world, like had been around already for years. Like we were getting started in early 2024. It was like a year plus out from the ChatGPT launch. A lot of the existing players were already there, you know, and the same was true in code specifically. I mean, there was, you know, GitHub Copilot, which people had already, you know, engineers had already used for years. And that was very much the like Q&A, like the autocomplete style experience of, you know, working with AI. You know, when you start a company, you kind of have nothing. Like you have no right to exist is maybe one way to put it. It's like an interesting truth about the world, which is obviously startups succeed. You know, startups succeed all the time. And the startup versus big company has been played out for, you know, for forever. But like, there's no reason, you know, in terms of resources, in terms of people, in terms of brand awareness, like you have none of the things that, you know, the big guys have. And so from that perspective, you have no right to win, you know, over what they're doing, you know. And the reason that you're sometimes able to anyway is if you really like, you know, plant your flag in the ground and put a stake into like what you think the future is, and you run like hell towards that. And if you like turn out to be right on some of the core things, and like I think we were wrong on a lot of things. To be clear, a lot of things we were, you know, so definitely we were early, which is a very fair criticism. I think a lot of the details and the nuances, like we learned and adjusted over time. But the idea that like you would work with AI as a coworker, you know, rather than as like a tool or a chatbot, I think was, I mean, over the last couple of years has obviously like really grown. And I think it was like very important for us, for our brand, for our recruiting, for, you know, customer work, everything, for us to be, you know, the first ones that actually planted that flag in the ground and said that.
So when did you have this idea where you guys are going to take a run at very, I would say ferociously, to like these giant like Fortune 500 companies, or even the US Army uses you?
Sure.
Like where did that strategy come from?
So funnily enough, so that launch was in March of 2024. And to your point, it went very viral, but again, we didn't have any customers, we didn't have a revenue, we didn't really have like, we had
I thought your first iteration of the business model was like $500 a month or something, wasn't it? Am I misremembering this?
So we had that was actually later on, actually. That was end of 2024.
Okay.
But, you know, initially what we started was just like, you know, a bunch of people came, asked us for the product. We were like, guys, I don't know if this is a product that's ready for prime time, but if you really, you know, you can try it and like, just let us know. And so like people ran, you know, we had to go and scramble to build a system of like okay, let's do like a pilot or like a POC, you know, and like, you know, we tried our best to like not overpromise and be like, guys, like really, it's like very early, but if you want to try it, you know, you can try it. And we did all these, and perhaps unsurprisingly, I mean, they were all just like failing, which is kind of natural. Like, it's like, you could do some pretty cool things with it. You could do some pretty interesting like toy demos or projects or whatever, but it was certainly not ready to work on like an actual company's like real code base and so on, right? And so from that point, this would have been like April or May of 2024, we were making agents work with like GPT-4. You know, this was like a very different era. So they were much more primitive agents. We kind of talked about this and got to this question of like, okay, well, what do we think it actually does look like when the agents start to get good enough for adoption? And I think what we kind of came to was, well, different tasks are different, right? And so like there are some tasks out there that are just really mundane and really repetitive, and you're just doing the same tedious thing over and over and over again. And there are some tasks on the other end of the spectrum that are like really tough, like architecture problems, or like deep, like, you know, deep issues that you have to like really understand all the context and have all the know-how to know how to fix. And like, people were trying to use Devin for all of those and were failing at it, understandably. And so then the question was like, okay, what are the natural tasks that are like, if there's like a first task that is going to have PMF, you know, and real value from these kind of agent experiences where it can do the whole thing end to end, what is that going to be? And we kind of said, okay, well, it should be some of these like really repetitive, tedious ones. It's not so cut and dry that you can just like have an automated script that does the exact thing every time. So it does take obviously some intelligence and some amount of meandering, but it is like repetitive enough and scoped enough and like on a tight enough feedback loop that you can have an agent do it, and it would be able to kind of go and diagnose and like fix that problem, right? And so that's kind of what brought us to some of these like naturally to some of these like, you know, initial use cases, which were things like migrations or version upgrades, or, you know, helping people upgrade from like Java 7 to Java 8 or something like that, which were kind of like, you know, as you can imagine, enterprise had enterprises had these massive code bases where they would go and do all that, and it's like a 50,000 file code base where you have to go, it's like the same 8 things that you need to change in each one. You have to be a little bit thoughtful about how you make the trade-offs, but like it's a very repetitive task, right? Our first success ended up being with a company called Nubank, biggest bank in Brazil, by market cap at the time. And the use case was like one of these big migrations. And we had kind of a custom Devin that was like extremely, extremely optimized for doing that. And as we grew from there, later on we had kind of, as things got a little bit more mature, we had both self-serve business and enterprise business and so on. But I think from the beginning, we had always seen this value that building software in the real world and managing massive, massive products that like millions of people use every day was pretty substantially different from, just building a cute website or a cute demo from scratch, right? And I think we really, really leaned into that. And naturally, it's, all the Fortune 500 or all the biggest companies in the world are software companies in 2026, even the ones that folks don't necessarily think of that way, right? And like Walmart or CVS or JP Morgan or Mercedes or whatever, they're all software companies, right? They have massive, massive teams of software engineers. They have tons of things that they're building and shipping and maintaining. And that kind of became like a natural thing for us to work on because like I think we had learned very early on that we want to work on real problems and we want to work on things that matter and that people actually care about.
So wait, what percentage of your revenue is coming from enterprise then?
Today, around 75, 80%.
What are people using on the self-serve? Like, what are examples of?
Yeah. So we have a lot of teams who use it in self-serve. I mean, that's grown actually, that's grown quite a bit as well lately. But we have startups who we have Exa, who uses it a ton, or Open Router, or Build. I ran into someone in my apartment in the elevator the other day. Like, oh, you're the Devin guy. Like we use Devin.
Are you Devin?
Hey, I've gotten that as well. Hey, are you Devin? And I was like, I'm actually not, but that's okay.
Why didn't we call it Scott?
There's kind of both self-serve and enterprise. With that said, it is entirely in both sides. It is still like actual engineering teams building real output. And so we don't focus at all on like, individual hobbyists who are just like trying to make a cool thing or something like that. We focus on like real teams who are building real products that they want people to use and getting output out of that.
Okay. Can you walk us through? I'm very curious. Like I'm a big enterprise.
Yeah.
I contact you.
Yeah.
Walk us through what happens to being a customer.
It starts with education. And everyone's gone crazy over AI and agents and so on. And those are the buzzwords of the last 6 months, obviously. And so they want to know more about this, but there's still a lot of detail and like, what does it actually look like to deploy them? What is it? So we'll show them what this looks like. We'll talk them through like how we work with teams and how we partner, how we direct them to the right use cases, how we give them guidance on like how to maximize their ROI or like what projects are or are not feasible with agents. And then from there, enterprises typically, obviously, have some very messy processes. And so, for most software or most, just generally like vendors that they'd want to work with, it's often, as you can imagine, for a massive bank, adopting software, giving it access to all of their, the repos, getting through security or whatever, that's like usually for typical companies, it's like a 12 to 18 month cycle. The thing that we do naturally is we just work with them to figure out how we go and do that as fast as is humanly possible.
Did you send employees down to South America for Nubank?
Well, so Nubank, the first one, honestly, our entire team was the forward deployed team. Like we all flew to Brazil. Like, it was like the first case, it's like, let's be real here, okay? Agents did not work generally, okay? And so it was a lot of like, how do you make it work for these very specific, like we all flew to Brazil. I was there, the whole team was there. We were sitting there with their engineers, understanding, okay, so this is what you do in that case, this is what you do in that case, and this is what Devin needs to know, and Devin needs to be able to read these things, and like going and debugging their like exact problems. Now, obviously, it's not like that at all, because,
Hold on, we'll get to where it is now. But the idea of like, no, we didn't deploy a team, we deployed the whole company.
No, it was, it was, getting the first customer obviously was like a real, it was like, I wonder what they thought of that. but like, yeah, it was like literally like, okay, let's go through all these different things that you guys think could make sense. Let's go through each one. Let's try some of it manually ourselves to understand what the task looks like. Let's see if we can teach Devin to do this correctly and build in the right kind of like, the right orchestration for Devin to be able to do this. And like, let's just like, basically building the product was like almost like building for one company. And yeah, it was fun.
So what do you do today?
So today it's obviously much more it's much more self-start, and the agents are so much more capable, obviously, and we've figured out a lot more things with the onboarding experience. But a lot of it is, we're saying these cycles typically take 12 to 18 months. We try to get deployed with folks, in like 3 months, and a lot of that requires folks to obviously, first of all, it requires them to really appreciate that it's a priority. If you have 25,000 software engineers that you're, in an org that's running that costs, $10 billion a year or something that you think can move 3 times faster, usually it is a priority. But then it's like figuring out how we get through the security reviews. We have all of the, we can deploy in their private cloud. We have very strict data agreements. We have like tight air walls on all these things. Obviously,
do employees physically have to go? Are they working with are these deals so big that they're working with a specific company and only that company for a period of time, or no?
Typically, no. We have a full forward deployed motion, but a lot of what that looks like, as we're saying, is a little bit more like user education and guidance. And so we will fly, we still do this where we'll fly out and kind of go and see customers and work with them, point them to the right use cases, teach them how to get success, help them with their setup and their playbooks, all these things for how to use Devin. But it's much more a kind of look, we're here to assist you guys. We're giving you a lot of this kind of direction and so on. But you are yourself, and your team is the one that's using Devin and running all of that, right? So that's a lot of what that looks like. We're set up to be as incentive aligned with our customers as possible. And so a lot of it is not just oh, here's this tool, hand it over to your engineers and find out what they say about it. It's okay, well, let's figure out what are the initiatives that you guys really care about? And we will point you to for those initiatives. Here are each of the projects that we think Devin right now can make you 10 times faster on. And we'll tell you for the ones that it's not, and here's what workflows you should use instead, or here's how you should get to value instead. But it looks more like that than a literal we are using Devin on your behalf or something.
Wait, so tell more about how you align the incentives between your company and then your customers.
Yeah, so a couple things here, which I think are really important. One, obviously, is just really working with them on the just very clearly defining the ROI, which I think is a very important. It's everyone's talking about this, right? Over the last few months, people are going crazy on their token budgets, and one engineer can spend so much, and you want to know that that's actually doing real value for you, and you want to be able to identify where you are.
Do you think all this stuff is a little crazy?
I think it is directionally correct, but I think there's some, there are definitely some places where people have gotten carried away. People talk about, we rank our engineers by how many tokens they're spending. Well, let's try and rank people by how much output they're actually producing or how much good work, is actually getting done, But obviously, I think that the math works out in terms of the GPUs are expensive, but if your engineers are actually able to ship 3 times more, then it's very clearly worth it. You just want to make sure you're doing it the right way, right? Obviously, a lot there on just tying to specific outcomes, tying to, okay, what are the actual tickets that are getting done? What are the projects and the initiatives? And this project, which was scoped out for 18 months and was going to be handed off to, an outsourced contractor, and was going to cost you $15 million. Let's just talk about how that you do this all internally with your own team, and you do it for $1 million, and you get it all done in 3 months. Stuff like that, which I think is super important. The second thing, which I'll call out especially, is just being neutral. A lot of discussion, obviously.
What do you mean by that?
Being neutral with respect to all the labs, the models themselves.
Yeah, I think you said you like being Switzerland.
Yeah, we like being Switzerland, exactly. And so I think it's an important thing of we are just as incentivized as they are to figure out how to make their token spend efficient, right? And so Devin is purposefully meant to be a compound model system. And so all of these different things, for the right task or even the right sub-task of a task or something like that.
Describe what a compound model system is.
Yeah. So for each different part of your use case, imagine, so let's say you tell Devin, hey, customer just reported this bug. There's a Jira ticket. Can you take a look at the ticket and go and solve the whole thing, right? What does Devin actually go do, right? First of all, Devin's probably going and investigating, understanding what does the report say, what's going on. Second of all, probably, as any engineer should, it's going to go and try to reproduce the bug itself, right? So it'll say, okay, let me spin up the product locally. We click around, try to follow the same steps that they followed and see if I can make the bug happen as well, right? Then if you did that, then okay, now you're looking at the logs, you're trying to figure out what went wrong, you're pinpointing what are the particular files or what was the flow of, what was the command flow that led to this. Then you do the debugging, then you go and test it again, make sure, all these steps, right? Then you put it up for review. And it turns out that there are different models that are good for different parts of these tasks, right? And even across different tasks, obviously, also, it's like, some tasks are these really crazy hard ones where you want to actually use max thinking and you want to use the very best models you can get your hands on in the world, right? And then many other tasks are, boilerplate enough or repetitive enough that what you care about is just getting it done really fast, getting an immediate answer, having the ability to verify that it was correct, but then beyond that, making sure that it was like as cheap and fast and efficient as possible, right? And so Devin, rather than being pegged to one model, and saying, oh, we're only going to serve you GPT for this, or we're only going to serve you Opus for this. Devin can use any of the different models it has in its arsenal, which include all of these models from Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, et cetera, but also our own models, right, or open source models out there. And it will, dynamically go and choose these models for these tasks.
How do you think about this? Like, you're a customer of them, but also competitor with.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in practice, there's a lot of positive some work for us to do together. And so the way that we think about ourselves, a couple things. One, software is the only thing that we care about, obviously. And there's a lot of value and focus in building products and building our whole motions specifically around that.
Say more about how you think about focus and the value in it.
Back to what we were saying about startups, right? Like, why do startups ever win at all? And if you do everything, you will lose to Microsoft or Google, who does everything, but also has like trillions of dollars more resources and 100,000 more people than you, right? And infinitely more brand name, right? And like the way that you build, like a real kind of like, a real like lasting business or lasting product is by really, really focusing and narrowing on one specific thing, making a very concentrated bet. And then obviously, your bet has to end up being right. But like, from there, it's like a lot of just like really tight execution. And so in software, I love, you and I have talked about this. I love the quote from Daniel Ek in Spotify, right? People were saying, so like, there's like YouTube's trying to go and do this, and Apple has Apple Music, and like, why should there be like he was like, I can give you all the other reasons, but the truth is we're just going to care way more about music than they are. And I think for us, it's true. It's like, we are just going to care so much more about like, what does it look like to build software end to end at Goldman Sachs or at like Mercedes-Benz or something like that, and there's a lot of nuance in that. And there's like a lot of messiness in that, right? It's not as simple as like, oh, here's a sandbox algorithms problem. Go and code me the correct, 30-line program that solves this problem or something. It's like, how do you work with all the messiness of the real world? How do you understand the code base as it exists today? How do you like collaborate with all the humans on it? How do you plug into their ticketing system? How do you give the agent the ability to test its own code and run everything locally, right? Like all of these are obviously just super hairy, messy problems. And that's what we care a lot about, right? And so from that perspective, it's a very kind of nice, like, the labs have their own products. I'm sure they'll continue to do more, but in practice, like there are a lot of nice ways for us to cooperate. Obviously, like on top of that, like being the Switzerland means that folks can work with us and kind of like trust in us that we will kind of route them to the right models, that we will optimize the price performance for them, that we will kind of like direct them to the right use cases and so on, because we're not incentivized for them to spend more on the models either. We're incentivized for them to get value and to get output out of it.
I love that you use the example of the war between Spotify and the rest of the Apple Music, for example. Jimmy Iovine, who also came on the show and now is actually a friend of mine, he actually called me yesterday about this because anytime anything happens with AI music and Spotify, he calls me. But we talked about this because he's like, you don't understand. Like, he had like 40 years of experience in the music industry, had all the relationships. He's like, Apple bought me for $3 billion. Spotify at the time, he's like, we're going to go head to head with them. Spotify only had 3 million paid subscribers at the time. Jimmy's going to fight the war. And he's like, I have one of the biggest companies in the world. Yeah. And then he talked about, he's like, that wound up being he thought it was an asset. It was a huge liability. Yeah. Because they're like, we don't give a shit about getting a couple million more, tens of millions or more of subscribers. Yeah. We invented the most successful consumer product of all time. Yeah. And he said something like they just clipped his wings. Yeah, and like he was trying to do something like, oh, this isn't important to us. Where Daniel was going to die if he was not successful. He just cared about it a lot more.
Dude, even in the 2 years that we've been around, I've heard so many different versions of the same argument. Because when we started, as you can imagine, this was true for us. It's true for everybody in the space, building the space. The number one pushback that you would always hear from investors, from other people was like, but like Microsoft already has GitHub Copilot. like, isn't that everybody's just going to use that, right? And it's like, it's a very reasonable thing to say in some sense because, you know, they did have all, you know, they did own all of GitHub and they did have the partnership with OpenAI and they did have like VS Code and so on. I think in practice, the reality is there's so much more innovation and so much more to build that there was a lot of like positive stuff. You know, Microsoft's like a great partner of ours and we do a lot of things together and we build even more together, right? And I think the reality is like, people have said this forever, like, oh, like, yeah, like startups versus, you know, like, why should it, you can give all the rational arguments.
10 years ago, it's like Google will do this or Facebook will do
for sure.
this.
It's like, oh, why should Datadog exist? Or why should Snowflake or Databricks exist or whatever? You know, this is the clouds. The clouds have all of it. You know, the clouds care about observability too. The clouds care. And the reality is like, it's in some sense, a bit of an uncreative way to think about things, I think. Like if there was like one thing that, okay, here's what we all know is going to be the end state future and everybody's just working toward it and whoever has the most resources toward it wins. And of course, yeah, you know, it's like, we know who has the most resources today, right? But if there are millions of problems out there to solve, there's lots of different things. The world is dynamic, things change all the time. There's lots of new, you know, ideas or opportunities or ways to build new products. Then the reality is like, of course, there's lots of different niches to own. There's different things to really bet on. There's different focuses to spend your time on. And I think that will continue. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like for better or for worse, after the last couple months of news, you know, Cognition, I think, has been a bit more of the like, we've become a bit more known as the, you know, the folks betting on independence in some sense, because obviously there have been some high profile acquisitions.
It's funny you said that because I wanted, one of the questions I'm going to ask you, which you probably won't answer, is like, how many different acquisition offers have you had?
I will not answer that question.
Dozens? More?
Dozens is a lot, dude. I don't know about dozens, but okay.
The time, it's probably only a handful that could actually afford to buy you if you would sell. But the amount of times they keep coming back.
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, it's definitely, anyway.
No, this independence part is really interesting to me. We were on the phone, me, you, and a mutual friend on three-way, like, I don't know. I think it was actually last summer. And we're not going to say the company. But I was like, Scott, what do you think about you know, an acquisition with X, not X the platform, X the blank company? And you're like, I don't know how we'd be able to afford them. You just assumed I meant you buying them. And I just fucking cracked up laughing. I was like, it's hilarious.
No, so I think like and it's like folks, like there are folks taking acquisitions and doing things. There's some big high profile ones. I think those are great, to be clear, and I think it's a very reasonable path for exit. As I mentioned, for us, it's like we've all come into this like we want to build a generational business. It's something we're really excited about. And I think today sometimes I've seen some more of this nihilism where they say, oh, like maybe it's too late and maybe it's not possible anymore. And like,
what does that mean? What's not possible?
Like maybe it's not possible to build a new independent business because everything else, you know, it's like all the
labs are going to do everything.
All the opportunities take it, you know? And it's like, guys.
Those people aren't founders. Founders are rationally optimistic.
Yeah.
They're just not founders.
Yeah.
They believe, even there's no evidence that they should succeed, that they will succeed.
Yeah.
So people like that just need to get a job.
Dude, I'd say this even with Devin. Like, if you think that going onto the Devin web app and like giving or any other coding product out there today, you know, and like giving the instructions the way that you do right now, and then you get the pull request out, and then that's how you review it, and that's how you build software. If you think that that's going to be the way that software is built forever, then then nothing will change. But like, I think we have 10 more generations of these different product experiences to come, right? And like building those and doing those is like, that is what innovation is. And like, that's what's going to happen.
The advantage I have of reading, you know, for the last decade of all these biographies of sophisticated entrepreneurs, like you're studying somebody's life, but in many cases, if you were so successful, they wrote a book about your life. It's like, almost like you get a minor in like new industry creation.
Yeah.
And every single time, it's just like, we're too late. It's over. There's no more opportunity.
Yeah.
And the way I thought about this was like the best definition of a business I ever heard actually came from Richard Branson, where he says all businesses is an idea that makes somebody else's life better. And if that's true, which I believe it is, then that means there's infinite opportunity in the future, now and in the future, because there's infinite ways to make somebody else's life better. And that's all a business is. So this idea that's like, we got to the end of history is just bullshit.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't mean to push you on this. Like, I am personally curious though, because like I know you're already rich. I don't think money is your North Star based on the conversations we had in the past. But like, there's got to be some crazy number somebody can throw at you where you're just like, fuck, I have to take this.
Not really on it. I mean, it's like you know, people have asked me sometimes before. They've asked me like, okay, but like really though, would you guys like?
This is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And the way that I say it sometimes is like, we would sell if we thought it was the most ambitious thing to do. It's kind of an oxymoron because obviously, but it's like my genuine answer in the sense that like that's like what we care about. It's like I mean, it's funny you talk about money. Like I mean, I don't even, dude. I don't have a car.
You live in an apartment. I just realized.
I have a rented apartment. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I think I like eating sushi. That's fun. The sushi doesn't cost that much. You can do that off of an engineer's salary as well.
Just so you know, if this is true, like then you are the type of entrepreneur that I find the most fascinating in the world. Because like when startup founders come to talk to me, it's just like, I don't give a shit about your startup. I ask the same question. It's like, is this your last business?
Yeah.
Right? I asked Kareem from Ramp this before we did this like deep partnership.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, you could sell it. Like the Zuck example where they're like, why didn't you take $1 billion? I think you own 25% of the company. You would have made 250 million. You're like 22. He's like, well, what would I do with the money? I would just start another social network. I kind of like the one I have. Like, I just want to build shit anyways.
Yeah.
So like, what do I do? And then the other element of this, which I think is almost tied into you, where it's like, I feel like you're just having a lot of fun. Like even being around here, it's just like, your company's weirder in the composition of the people because it's literally just all nerds. Like, and I think and I mean, but like, like there's usually a mixture of obviously the nerds and some other people. And like, you kind of built this, like, almost like your social network is
you're
like
not allowed here if you're not a nerd. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a physical manifestation of your social network. But like the way I would describe this is like,
okay, cool. No, so my friends are all also nerds. Yeah, I agree.
And I mean that in obviously
an enduring way. I love that. Yeah.
But what the people I'm most interested in is just like, there's no price, right?
Yeah.
Like the example I use is you go ask Steve Jobs, I'll give you $2 trillion, but you can't work in Apple.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you think he would have said?
Yeah, I agree.
No, he's like, well, I want to work on Apple. That's what I want to do. There's a funny thing that I wanted to tie together, which I didn't find the opportunity till now, is you are currently the second wealthiest entrepreneur from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I don't know if you remember, we've talked about this.
We've talked about this, yeah.
The first one.
Chicken fingers, great business, but I'm a customer of that business as well.
The first one is Todd Graves.
Yeah.
Owns Raising Cane's.
Yeah.
I talked to him. He was on the show.
Yeah.
You tell him you'll give $100 billion for your chicken finger empire.
Yeah.
He's turned down, and I know this for facts. I've talked about it. Yeah. He's turned down crazy acquisitions offers. Yeah. He's like, I don't care about, it's not the money.
Yeah. No, I mean, for us, it's very like, again, it's not rational, but like the way that I would describe it is like, I feel, and I think all of us do, like that it'd be one thing if we tried and we gave it our all and we just weren't good enough, that'd be fine. Like, okay, it wouldn't be that. Dude, I'd be salty as hell.
It wouldn't be fine.
But it would be an outcome. It would be like an outcome that I could live with, But if we felt like, we could have gone for it all, we could have pushed harder, and we didn't. Like that, I think is like, I don't think we would like live with ourselves in that outcome. And that's like if you have me explain it, it's kind of circular. I don't know, but it's like, why are we so excited to do this? Why do we do, it's like, we want to achieve our potential and build what we were meant to build, and maybe that's something and maybe that's nothing, but like, you'd rather find out and see,
I think this idea of you have one life, go.
Yeah.
Is a perfect place to end. Thanks for the time, Scott.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.